Hello everyone, this is Helios Raven. I tell you how I do it, even if you don't care. And today we're going to wrap up our basically our next lesson, which is the end phase of Battlefleet Gothic, the basic rules. Now, basically, the end phase is, as you would probably guess, the last stage in any player's turn. And there's really only two steps that you do in the end phase. First step, repair any critical systems. Second step, remove blast markers. Okay. Now, the first step, repairing damage, is basically as it is describes. What you're doing is this is an attempt to repair critical effects on your ship, not get hit points back or anything like that. No, hit points are lost that you lose are lost for good. And so you can't really get those back, but you can. On certain critical damages that affect your ship, you can get rid of them. And the way you would do that is simply by, you would take a d6 for every hit point he still has. So let's just say, for argument's sake, this Gothic cruiser has 3 hit points left. You would roll, okay, and for every 6 you get, that counts as 1 damage being repaired, and we have 1 6 way back here. We have a 6, a 5, and a 4. So I get to remove 1 critical effect on the ship. Now keep in mind, there are some effects like shield collapse and certain other stuff that cannot be repaired. If it specifically says it cannot be repaired, then there's no point, and that's the only type of critical damage you have, then there's no point in rolling. Now if you have a critical damage effect on you that says this happens until it's repaired, then you by all means get to roll, like I said, 1d6 for every hit point the ship has remaining, and every 6 removes one critical damage effect that can be repaired. The next part is removing blast markers. Simply put, if you say have a bunch of blast markers on the field, let's get a few out here just for show. Okay. You got one, can't see them. So we got 1 touching his base stand here, 1 way over here, and 1 over here. Now what you would do is, now what you would do is at this point is you would take 1d6 and roll it. And so we got a 4. That means I get to remove 4 blast markers on the field. Any ones I want, so I remove this one, and I remove this one. And there is an exception to this. You cannot remove any blast markers that are touching a ship's base stand. I guess what it's supposed to be a representation of is all the dust and debris and all that dispersing. So I guess touching the base stand of the ship, it's basically threatening the ship in a sense still. So it's still not because the ship's too close to it. It is too dangerous, and it's supposed to represent the fact that it's still within dangerous parameters of the vessel at hand. So you can't remove blast markers that are touching your ship's base stands, and you cannot remove any more blast markers than they're out on the field. So if you get a 5, and there's only 3 blast markers out that you can remove, you remove those 3, and you have to remove them from the field. The trick with blast marker removal is you want to remove ones that benefit you but hinder the opponent. So, like, the best thing to do is, like, say if there was a vessel really close to this ship, I would want to remove all the blast markers that would basically cause me to take, like, either a column shift to the left because I fire with my weapon batteries, or get rid of them. So if I fire any torpedoes or ordnance, I have no blast markers to worry about in the next time around. Or I want to keep them like that, so the vessel is a little bit hindered in getting rid of, Like in one game that I had, we had just like, there were so many blast markers on the field, he kept trying to remove ones that my opponent kept trying to remove temp markers that would make it easy for his torpedoes to hit my vessels, because there was just this wall of blast markers, and I kept trying to avoid removing those, so his ships were basically stuck having this gauntlet to get through, to get to my vessels. But neither here nor there. Now, one note, any vessel, and each player gets to roll repairs on their on their damage tables. So it's not just, oh, it's on my turn. It's a representation of the crews acting 24/7 to make sure that the ship stays in working order and is maintained. And the end phase, the blast marker removal, only the player whose turn it is gets to remove blast markers. And that's it for the basic rules. And now we're going to do what I like to call the things Helios forgot to mention. First thing I forgot to mention is with leadership. When making command checks for your vessels, there are a couple of modifiers that come into effect when you're making leadership checks for taking on special orders and such. Granted that no modifier can increase your ship's leadership value any higher than 10. 10 is the maximum, so if you have a leadership of 10 and you get a +1 bonus, that ship does not have a leadership 11. 10 is the maximum. So basically, there's always that one. So your chances are a little bit higher of failing leadership rolls, sort of like how in Warhammer 40k, I think unless it's been a while, the only leadership value, the highest is 10. So, with that in mind, when making a command check, you take a -1 if there are any blast markers touching your ship. So let's say for this ship right here, he's got a command check of 8. He now has a command check of 7 because he's got blast markers touching his stand. Those blast markers are out like this, no effect because they're not touching his stand directly. You also get a +1 modifier if there's any enemy vessels under special orders. So, like for an example, the Imperial cruiser here with a leadership of 7 wants to use an all-ahead full order to catch up with a Chaos cruiser. The Chaos cruiser used lock-on orders last turn, so the Gothic cruiser gets a +1 modifier to its leadership value. Rolling 2d6, the Imperial player gets a 2 and a 6 for a total of 8. It passes its command check by equaling its modified leadership value. Okay? And that's basically it for that. The other thing that I forgot to mention is, it's a little side note. One person asked a question, I figure I'll just clarify this in case anyone is also asking. Torpedoes. Now, in my video that I showed, the torpedoes, when I fired my torpedoes, I had them go in a straight line forward. Thinking about this and looking at all the pictures, and here if I can get this guy, see, those 3 holes there are supposed to be torpedo tubes. So if you think about it, if he's got, like, let's just say for argument's sake, this has 6 torpedoes, how are the torpedoes on this side gonna go out in this direction? So the big question one of the questions that someone asked is do torpedoes fire straight forward, or can they fire anywhere in the arc? Well, after looking through the Battlefleet Gothic Handbook, there is no rule that says either here nor there. It just says they're normally armed in the front of the ship. And it says, and when you look at them, it says their firing arc is the front arc. So, technically speaking, a torpedo servo doesn't have to fire straight forward. It can ride the firing arc line. So if there's a ship really close that like right here that wants to get rid of it, technically can aim the missiles to fire on an angle if that would actually make it hit the ship. So at that point, that's for the players to decide, because as the book says, I'll mention here, it says these rules are completely rewritable. If there's a rule you think is silly or stupid or needs a little tweaking, as long as the other opponent is okay with it, they do encourage you to alter the rules a little bit to make it more entertaining for you if there's a rule there that you just think is outright stupid. Kind of why there are a lot of modifications and fan-made rules for the game, because Battlefleet Gothic basically invites you to do it. In fact, they insist that you make the game, alter the game rules, use the game book, to figure out how the rule sets should work and then make your own rules as long as they're balanced and everyone's okay with them. That's all their fair game. But technically speaking, in the Battlefleet Gothic Handbook, it doesn't say the torpedoes have to fire forward. They can fire on an angle as long as they're within the firing arc of the ship. And so, with that, We are running very low on time, but we're good for a little bit more, so we're going to continue on to the advanced rules. Okay, and we're back now. I do suggest that before you continue watching this and taking on these rules, to play the game with the rules we've just discussed so you can get a feel for the mission. If you're pretty confident and you just want to learn everything right now, then let us continue with the advanced rules. And the way this works is, the first thing that we're going to talk about is an advanced rule added to the movement phase, and that's called disengaging. Disengaging, basically, as it sounds, is when the vessel goes, "Let's get out of here," and runs off the field. There are two different ways of disengaging from a fight. The first one is if a squadron or a ship moves off the field. If they move off the field accidentally, like if they're stuck and their turning is reduced and their movement gets them off the field, they're gone. If they just go off into the side, they go off and that's it. You can't use them anymore. They count as being off the game, out of the game entirely. So basically, you have to be careful because even if for any reason whatsoever the ship goes off the field, it's gone. It can't come back. There is another way, in case you feel like the ship is not doing good, it's crippled or something, and you decide to, you want to get out of there, but you can't get there in time. At the end of your movement phase, you may take a leadership, with factoring in the following modifiers. You take a negative, you get a +1 if for each blast marker within 5 centimeters. Again, you cannot go any higher than 10 on your leadership. But say for these guys right here, that's an additional +2 to your leadership, and now it's a +3 because there's 3 blast markers within 5 centimeters of this vessel. Any celestial phenomenon within 15 centimeters. This counts as any table feature such as an asteroid field or a planet. If the table effects such as a radiation burst or solar flare is taking place, this bonus applies anywhere on the table. Each enemy ship or ordnance marker within 15 centimeters, you take a -1 to your leadership. Okay, I'll put these modifiers down in the video description for you guys as well. Once you've calculated what your modified leadership is, you roll 2d6, and if you equal or go under your command check, the ship leaves the field. Any ship or squadron that through a combination of effects is reduced to a leadership of 1 or less must attempt to disengage or move towards the closest table edge. So basically, if for any reason your leadership is reduced down to 1 or less, then you either have to make the command check to disengage or move to the closest table edge. It's basically a representation of morale breaking and the vessel's going, "We gotta get out of here, there's no chance that we're winning this," and they run off. And so that is basically all there is for the rules of disengaging. There is one more rule in the movement phase, but we're running very short on time. So I'm going to hold off on that one for now. And so go out with these new rules. If you want, factor in disengaging in there because it is kind of basic, you can get away with. So take these rules, play a mission or two in the Battlefleet Gothic Handbook, or just get a bunch of cruisers and fight it out. And join back in a couple of hours with the next video of the official Lesson 1 in Advanced Rules. So, until next time, this is Helios Raven, signing off.